Have you played against him?
We scrimmaged last year.
What's that
when I
going to
was
be
when I was
like
at Ohio.
when you guys go?
Well, I was asked the same question this past week, Herb. I think the biggest thing is once the game tips. I think we talked about it. Tupper and I talked about it this past week. It's at that point it's game on. You're more concerned about executing and coaching your team, and just kind of at that point it becomes another really competitive game between competitive guys and competitive players, and I think sometimes that can get over-dramatized a little bit. Obviously, we have a great friendship and a great, I think, appreciation for one another. Our families are close, and so that part makes for good pregame drama, I guess.
John, how much attitude changing have you had to do since taking over?
It's a great question. I try not to get caught up too much in the past and look in the rearview mirror or comment about that because I wasn't here. I think that's unfair. I think from an attitude perspective, not a lot at this point. Now, we haven't been popped in the mouth yet, and that'll happen. Every team gets popped in the mouth, and every team has to deal with success as well as adversity throughout the course of a possession, a game, a season. And so at that point, then we're going to see where our attitudes really lie. We'll learn a lot at that point. And I think the great thing about our schedule early with us going to Hawaii is we're going to be challenged early at a high level. So we're going to learn a lot about our team.
John, you've already made inroads recruiting a couple of kids from the Chicagoland area for next year. You've heard this question probably 100 times, but how important is the Chicagoland area to the University of Illinois?
Well, I think the whole state's really important. I think, I did a study a few years ago. If you look at rosters of national champions or Final Four teams, the majority of those rosters are within roughly 6 hours of the campus. So I think, we call it that breadbasket or that area of proximity that's within about 6 hours of the campus. I think all of that area is important. Obviously, our state's important. We're talking 13 million people that are fanatical about basketball at the high school level, the collegiate level, the professional level. And then you're talking about Chicago within that's 3+ million of that 13 million. So we'd be foolish not to put an emphasis on Chicago. There's been a great tradition there and love for basketball, and in particular, a passion for Big Ten basketball. So we're going to do everything we can to take advantage of that. I've said the whole time, you don't have to get all of them. I think sometimes that gets, people get misconstrued on that deal. You got to get the right ones, the ones that fit. And, obviously it's such a large city. You're not going to get all of them. You got to get the right ones, and you got to get some of them.
How much do you credit Thad for helping you get to where you are today?
Well, I credit him a great deal. I've had a lot of influences. Thad's certainly one of the primary ones. Todd Licklider's another one. He was my high school coach. Paul Patterson, Sean Miller. I've got Brad Stevens. Alan Major, Archie Miller. All the guys that are kind of in our coaching tree, and I'm probably missing a name or two. I've been very fortunate to have been around great coaches, worked for great coaches, worked with them, and had a lot of really, really good players. So, wouldn't have the opportunity to be at Illinois if that wasn't the case.
Got a lot of your players at the table next to you have already talked about it's more exciting to play fast break basketball, or at least up-tempo basketball. Can you talk about your philosophy and how important that is to a program?
Did they share with you to be able to do that? We got to have more assistant turnovers. It's something we believe in. We're convicted that we want to play an attacking style. As I've said all along over the last several months, will we be able to play that style on steroids here in year one? I don't know. It remains to be seen. I know this, regardless of how fast you're playing, if you don't take care of the basketball, then, it can be, you can have some long nights. So I think the most important thing is we want to play at a speed and a pace that allows this particular team to be successful, and then we'll work from there in terms of how we, ramp it up, or, whether we scale it back a little bit for, this particular team.
Is it at all difficult to coach kids that you didn't personally recruit, or is it an easy thing?
I'll give these guys a lot of credit, and I mean it too. I told my wife the other day, I love practice. We started on the 12th. Every guy's ready to practice. We've had one bad practice so far, but guys want to be there. They want to learn. They're excited to be there. So from that standpoint, it's not been overly challenging because of the buy-in that the guys have had. They've been very coachable, very teachable, and that's been a real blessing.
It's recruiting, sure. Being we're going to go for young kids and get commitments from them, verbal commitments. Are you going to go overseas? Are you going to go for one and dones? I mean, what's the overall philosophy?
Well, we're going to try to get the very best people and players that we can, regardless of whether they're, one and done or overseas or, within our, what we talked about, our breadbasket kind of being that 6-hour radius. I think we got to do a really good job there for sure. But, the one thing I think the Illinois brand, and as we continue to, hopefully be successful, that brand has the potential to be one that's not just statewide, but regionally for sure. And then you hope to get to where nationally you get people's attention as well. So, I think all of those are options. We're as my staff will say, we're not afraid to go anywhere for a great person and great player. We'll travel wherever we need to put our team together, to put the best team together possible.
John, what does it mean to you to be in this conference and also to be part of some of the people that are in this room right now?
Well, it means a lot. I watched Big Ten basketball when I was younger. It's what I grew up on. I'm a Midwest guy. 37 years worth I've lived in either Illinois, Indiana, or Ohio, so I've been in that Big Ten geographic footprint my whole life. Coached in the league. There's great coaches in the league. There's great players in the league. I think the league right now is as deep as it's ever been and as stable as it's been. I shouldn't say ever been, but recollecting back to 04, certainly in the 04 to 2012 stint, 04 being the first year I was a coach in the league at Ohio State. And just looking at over these last 8 years or so, this may be about as stable and as deep as the league has been.
John, what was your league? Is the quality of the league worrisome to you? I mean,
no, because I can't control that. My first year at Ohio, I may have worried about that a little bit as a first-year head coach, and worried about things that you can't control. Those are some things you can't control. If you try to worry about controlling things like that, Herb, I think you can drive yourself crazy really fast. I'm more worried about what we have, who we have. I like our guys. How can we make them better on a daily basis? What are the things that we need to do to be competitive? What's the best way that we can teach those things and do those things effectively to give us the best chance to compete and win? That's really what I'm concerned about.
John, what was your perception of Illinois basketball coming in? And now that you're in the middle of it, has that changed much?
Well, when I took it, I knew that it was, obviously basketball at Illinois. People are fanatical. Just the other night, I went to. I go to events where they've been putting on these events in our state for 20-some years, dating back to Coach Henson, Coach Kruger, Coach Self, Coach Weber, and the number of those events. You walk in venues and there's 300, 400, 500 people there, and you get standing ovations. And I mean, it's I knew that people were passionate about basketball, but then once you go through it and you start to experience some of these things, you realize how much they really care at a high level about Illinois basketball, and that part's pretty neat.
John, at one point last year, this team was ranked. They were playing pretty well. Obviously, it didn't end the way they wanted to. What are your expectations for this year's team?
The one thing, and I alluded to my first year earlier, and I made that mistake my first year. You get caught up in, wins, losses, all that stuff. That stuff to me, the last 3 years that we were at Ohio, we never really talked about, we're going to win this many games, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. What we did talk about is we're going to play with some toughness. We're going to play together. We're going to execute. We're going to affect the other team on the defensive end. We're going to be disruptive. We want to take care of the ball. Here's our goals in those categories. We've got to worry about getting a little bit better every day. If we do those things, then we're going to have a chance to do some of the things that the guys had set out as goals for each of those individual teams, and that's exactly what happened. I think, getting into predicting, I think about the 05-06 team that we had at Ohio State. You guys can research it, but I want to say that team on this very day in 05-06 was picked like maybe 9th or 10th, and they won the league. So I don't get caught up in all that. I'm more concerned about process and doing things the right way and getting caught up in the journey.
Coach, what's it like going up against all these big-time coaches in the Big Ten? And when it comes to recruiting, not just the Chicago, but the whole state of Illinois, what's that challenge like?
Well, obviously, recruiting in general is a challenge. There are great coaches in this league. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's as stable as the league has been, certainly dating back to 04 when I first entered the league as a coach. But again, I think, obviously I can't control necessarily who's coaching at what school. I have great respect for the coaches in this league and the players in this league. I'm more worried about what's going on at Illinois, and I don't go to practice every day and say to myself like, ooh, such and such coach isn't here, or they got I can't control that. So I'm more worried about our guys, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and I choose to let my mind be consumed and absorbed with those things.
Just on Coach Mata, how do you describe and characterize your relationship?
We're friends. We're friends on a professional level and on a personal level. I don't think that's changed a whole lot. We've known each other since, I was in high school. I had a lot more hair then. So, our families, I told Mark the other day, someone asked me, like last week, I think my wife took my 2 boys to go see How to Train a Dragon over in Columbus, and spent some time saw Thad. The personal side. Obviously, now that you're in the same league, you don't share as much professionally or recruiting. You don't do that, but friends, probably the best way to characterize it.